given us a lot to think about. You, Fire Safe Council guys, you're way ahead of us.
Good, thank you. I'll
Right.
relay that to Callie Gann and back to the board.
I will certainly do that, and I'll send a note, and then
She just told
we
me
need
that
you
is
to
so
help
cool.
us, you know, incorporate
So-
this stuff into this plan.
This actually.
Okay, so,
Doing some law.
where is Ryan?
Do a meeting.
Oh, there.
Who are you? Brian McKillop. Nice to meet you.
Go ahead. Okay, so one of the things we have to do for this plan, for these projects, is we have to do greenhouse gas calculations, and the consultants for the plan, the climate change part of this thing, gave us a modeling tool to use. And Ryan Halpern, here, do you guys want to sit down here? Or? So what we're going to do is Ryan took one of his projects, the Goodrich Creek Biomass Project, and ran through these calculations. And the first question is, how long did it take you to do it, Ryan?
Now this is the software that states.
This is their spreadsheet that they provided.
Oh, is this similar to the CAL FIRE GSG calculator? Totally different, huh?
This is from Air Resource Board?
No,
This is these consultants. Randy, tell us about these consultants.
We have E-Corp and Michael Baker and Associates as sub-consultants. They're doing the climate change portion of the plan.
Was that PMC? Michael Baker, did they?
It used to be PMC, Michael Baker bought them out. PMC? Yeah, but we're not getting. So they produced a climate greenhouse gas tool. It's a spreadsheet for some reason.
Yay!
No, it's not.
Is this free?
yeah, they
Yeah.
emailed it to.
Okay.
They email it to everybody, and we have to kind of run through the projects on it. And I just wanted somebody who knows how to do this stuff to lead us through.
I don't know how to, I wouldn't say anybody knows how to do greenhouse gas analysis.
Well, that's the way to start.
Particularly the air board, right?
Yeah, right, and if you're trying to satisfy CARB, good luck. I ran through it. Their sheet is very general. It's set up for all these projects, and it's very construction oriented. So in terms of what we do with chipping or anything like that, it doesn't fit very well at all. So the first thing to kind of understand, you have to make a lot of assumptions.
As with any model.
With any model.
I don't know why it's not doing it.
You want to run it on my laptop?
Yeah, let's.
Yeah.
I knew this meeting was on.
Here, I can.
Except Terry just left with the talking.
Try to work with an
Did
apple.
she?
I know.
Well, this is the one that you did.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Right.
But any of them.
It's on this.
On this flash drive?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, it's on she put it on the desktop.
Yeah, but it's also on this.
Oh, okay.
Why don't you just hand it to Zeke so we
Just
can
hand it.
move it?
I have a thumb drive if you need one for transfer. Oh, you got it.
No, he's got it. Let's just keep this going so that we can get out of here. Yeah, we
Get past the apple barrier.
greenhouse gas grants
Yeah.
too?
I actually did, but my fire safe council wasn't comfortable with my proposal, so I actually put it under the RCD, which I'm on the board there. And I still haven't heard back, and I'm convinced we're gonna get funded. It's gonna be awesome. They've just been waiting. They've just been saving up to tell me that we got funded. They haven't awarded any for the fuel reduction.
Oh, we have it?
No,
Okay.
they're still under review in SAC. I mean, they've been under review for 4 months.
From what we were told, this week at our fire safe council meeting. In the next 2 weeks,
Really?
that's what they say. And if you weren't gonna, they also said if you weren't gonna get funded, you had already got a rejection letter, so if you haven't got,
Woo, everybody,
That's the
cheers for
rumor.
this room.
that's the word on the street.
Well, if we get funded, we got a good proposal in.
Excellent.
Alright.
Okay, so Ryan, take
Okay,
it away.
so what you end up with is, this is their spreadsheet. It's got a bunch of tabs at the bottom that you don't have to fill anything out on. It's just all its assumptions. So when you get back to project assessment, you start here. Project construction emissions. So the project requires non-off-road. You say yes for these types of chipping projects. When you're in this, for whatever reason,
Or the drop down.
there's drop-down menus, and it only has certain options, and those are your options. You can't add your own. So, like I said, I put 2 rubber-tired loaders because that was the closest thing they had to skidders on there. I put an excavator. One excavator I used as like a shovel loader. One excavator I used as like a Timco. Other construction equipment, that's what I assumed my chipper was. And then we're working on a 2,800 acre project. So I went with, you're getting 10 acres a day, 280 days.
And you can.
And
is that
so all
per-
you have to put in is your
You're using the
maximum
one
number
you're
per day and your total 8 hours in
So for
operation.
biomassing, you're assuming you can get 10 acres a day. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
I mean, it's a pretty close number to what you can do. You could probably do more. It depends on the ground, but
So you're
That's pretty
getting the
reasonable.
material in, and what's the second excavator doing?
one's a shovel, one's a cutting machine.
Are you feeding the chipper with
So,
one?
yeah,
Okay.
depending on the chipper,
Okay.
you know, most guys are going to the nice new big chipper, they're feeding it with the shovel, yeah. And then I went, project requires biomass materials to be transported. See, now this is tricky, cause I added, see how biomass is in red? I added that. This originally says the project requires materials to be transported, and I think it's from outside of the watershed. So this was like, you had stuff you needed to bring in for construction. Well, I'm looking at this totally different. I got stuff I gotta take out, because Jay's not buying chips. No offense, Jay.
But whether you're coming or going, it's the same thing.
Right, it's the same deal, so.
It's extra fuel and
Yeah,
greenhouse.
right, it's the same thing, so it still applies. You know, so then you start figuring your bone dry tons per load, per acre, all that, and that figures into that. So I figured I had about 2,300 loads. To get out to Honey Lake Power east of Susanville from my project site, it's 50 miles. You can figure that out on Google Earth real easy. And then it's all the total tons per carbon, it's putting in there. You're not doing any of that. The project requiring workers from outside the watershed, I just assumed no. I assumed I could find guys inside the watershed to do it. Is it possible somebody comes from outside? Sure, but I assume no.
But they're just counting emissions for traveling to
Travel
the job
time.
site.
So if you had somebody coming from Red Bluff or something, you'd take your days and other, I didn't put any other, although, well, we can talk about it when we get back. When we get to the next page, it's operating emissions. Requires energy to operate. I took this as some kind of, I mean, cause it's an annual thing, that this was permanent energy needed to operate, so I said no.
No.
This project will generate electricity. In my mind, you should be able to answer this yes.
Not right
But
now. You
The
can't.
way this form is, you can. Because this project will generate electricity, it's not gonna generate electricity annually, it's gonna generate electricity basically
Until the fuel.
one time when it's burned. You could discount that out over 20 years and say that's your re-entry period. There was ways I was thinking you could get around this to answer this yes. It'd give you, you know, it basically give you a bonus.
Does this have a how-to
Not really.
description?
That's what Terry Russ was here for.
This is
She
wing
teaches
it.
us.
Okay.
So then you get to, the project will proactively manage forest to reduce wildfire risk. You can say yes, you put your acres in, you get your big bonus.
But couldn't you, you're treating 2,800 acres, but theoretically, couldn't you say that you're gonna protect even more? Because,
If you wanted to make those
Say you're
assumptions and have to
protecting the whole
defend them.
so
Yeah.
just to be conservative, you just,
You're up,
you just
like I
use your
said,
treatment.
if you wanted to say that and then have to defend it, that's your call.
Again,
I'm not, cause I don't wanna have to spend that much time defending my assumptions.
Well, especially if you're only spending 700 whatever and you're gaining
Yeah,
17.
when you look at the bottom line of this, you're making out like a bandit. So, you know, affect wetland acreage, no. Include new trees, no, I'm not planting new trees. And this is your bottom line, so you're sequestering 17,000 tons and you're spending 670. If you break this down, and I mean, for us that are in the industry and have to do this regularly, I shouldn't say this
Go
on
ahead,
camera.
say it.
This is a joke.
Okay.
Because it doesn't account for growth, it doesn't account for what you actually cut, it doesn't account for a lot of issues that we would typically have to account for. It's just saying, I'm gonna take this out and protect the area from fire, and here's my bonus. It's real simple, but it has to be for the way it's designed.
Right, and for.
Because it's taken in, it's a one-size-fits-all thing. But it worked. And you have to make some, you know, kind of
In your opinion,
adjustments to make it work.
is this even close?
No.
Well, for one thing, it doesn't account for any relationship with an electric generator.
Well, that's one minor part. We did some similar modeling for these greenhouse gas grants with CAL FIRE. When you really model it out, it doesn't turn out nearly this good. It's about a wash.
Really?
But they're pretty conservative.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the difference. If you have a and it depends on who's doing the model.
Right.
You know, our guys back it way off so that
so it's not assuming too much.
it's not assuming too much, because you have to be able to defend it. If you go out there and be more aggressive with it, it's all modeling.
Like protected from wildfire, that's a value statement too.
Well,
Right.
but, you know.
You assume it's burnt, if I don't do this, it's gonna burn and it's gonna burn catastrophic.
Right.
That's where you're getting the big bonus.
That's where you get the big
That's
bonus.
true, that, I mean, that.
That's,
right,
and
I
that's
realize that.
legit.
Yeah,
It's but you don't account for what you removed. So you're decreasing sequestration of, that probably balances out over time just with that. With the basal area that was removed.
Did you hit any of the other tabs at the bottom?
I did, but that scared me.
You don't have to. So you
Because
don't
I think that's all the other tabs
You
are.
don't have to enter anything into the other tabs.
Yeah, the other
They're all
tabs are
readouts
just
and
how it
references.
does its own thing, and I wasn't gonna adjust any of their word. I mean, this is
Yeah,
the
don't.
model at this point. I wasn't
Don't
touching
adjust
that.
their
Yeah. You know, I mean, this is their assumptions.
That's fuel.
But that was what they went into it with, the idea that if you do wildfire risk reduction, then you are not releasing these greenhouse gases and catastrophic fire. And I think for state policy, that's a good place to start.
Yeah, it's
Not
a look.
getting into the weeds
Completely,
about how much it
exactly.
translates out and all that sort of thing.
I
So,
agree.
so this is what we're using, unless you have major objections, but I think it, for what its purpose is to evaluate fuels reduction versus other projects, in that scheme, I think it's gonna tell us what we wanna hear, which is, you get in there and you take care of these forests, we are not gonna be seeing these kinds of emissions, and that's really their question. I understand if you're trying to argue for CAL FIRE and CARB and all those
Right.
other things, that's a kind of a different thing.
And that's the thing, I wouldn't, when it came down to actually applying for grants, I wouldn't lean on this at all. I think if you got anybody looked at it real close, you get a lot of
It's
questions.
cheaper.
I'll bet you it's
Yeah.
do we have one
25 birds.
approach that everybody agrees on? Okay.
No.
And so,
Doesn't exist.
okay, so if you were gonna be photorealistic, you could talk about a range
Yeah.
of outputs. This being maybe on the most optimistic, as if, you know, greenhouse gas is what matter to the state, which on one level it does, you know, but then in other places, so I think we can get around this, but this is the tool we've got, and this is the tool we're gonna punch through our projects on. Now, if people wanna say you're being too confident, then they can go and tell us how to
And my thing
knock
would
it
be
down.
just, the only thing that I thought was, you just gotta find what best piece of equipment fits your project. And go from there. The rest of it's pretty straightforward.
You were gonna say something?
Well, I was just curious, because with the greenhouse gas applications that were out this last, earlier in the spring,
Due in June, right?
they had to accept, there was only certain calculations they were accepting for that process. I didn't get to follow through on my application, but I was curious to maybe what one you ended up with, or using that was acceptable to them.
And we don't know if it was acceptable.
Nobody knows, that's the thing.
I know it was a big thing in the workshop, you know,
What we
back
had, the
and forth.
one thing that worked for us to at least to submit a proposal is, I developed a proposal on behalf of the RCD, but it was a partnership with Sierra Institute for Forest and Environment, which is in Taylorsville, and they're the ones that are really doing this small-scale biomass push. And on their board of directors is a guy who, John Nickerson, who was willing to help us with the calculations.
Yeah.
If we didn't have that, I wouldn't have submitted anything, but we started dialogues with Sierra Institute, and there was a nice nexus between, WUI, fuels reduction, and biomass utilization within, 10 miles from where the project's proposed. And then also we tied in a horizontal grinder for a community fuel reduction, just so we can deal with these piles that communities build themselves,
Right.
go around periodically, grind, and send those materials to a central site in Crescent Mills. So we were able to integrate all these different pieces and then show our carbon balance based on that. So Nickerson helped us with especially with the fuels reduction piece, and then we kind of figured out some ideas about, generally in the county, we have X amount of acres of privately held non-industrial timberland. Each acre, based on some calculations we made internally, creates, 16 cubic yards of material, which has a footprint, if burned in open piles, this puts out this much. If it's burned in these high efficiency boilers, it puts out this much. The difference is this, so and it was a kind of a complex thing, but basically, I hope it gets funded. I don't know. I'm not,
Well,
To be
and I think
continued.
a lot of what happened was, everybody kind of did like what Nils is saying, but they did it for their own project and they did it differently.
yeah.
So they got a handful of projects, and every single one of them, I bet, was modeled differently, and now they're going, well,
But I got a different spreadsheet.
they
to
can't,
work
they
on
either have
too.
to say, your model's wrong, or and nobody, I think
know,
that's what hung the
Some
whole
were gonna be
thing up.
acceptable and some weren't, but I never got the clarity on what was what during the process, that's what I was curious.
When I heard, I went to our RCD was involved, we led a tour in the spring for this statewide RC&D Forest Workgroup committee, and some of the folks there are on CAL FIRE staff, and so they're saying, if your numbers are in the ballpark, and if your calculations are just a little wrong, we might come back to you saying, hey, we think that you need to recalculate this, but you're on the right track. That was one of the narratives that we heard. And then since then, I've basically, periodically, I just send an email to somebody at CAL FIRE saying, I'd like to know the status of the proposals. But I think if we got funded, it'd be wonderful, because we have this crisis with green waste.
Right.
And we do want to have some kind of biomass solution, and Sierra Institute, thanks to Sierra Nevada Conservancy and others, has been hammering on this for so long that they've actually paved the way a lot. And so part of our request was to get some funds to help buy the property, which Sierra Institute hadn't been able to do at that time. I think they have good money now. So it's kind of like we're developing a model. It was kind of like, we're going to do this experimental thing. We're going to develop this long-term infrastructure that's going to help us in the long term, and then we're going to have this horizontal grinder that can be available to all the communities in the county, so we can actually efficiently take this material and haul it to the site to be used to make fuel for these boilers, offset
Conservancy developing model?
You know, we contract out all our CEQA stuff, so I'm gonna have to ask someone what's going on with that.
And maybe show them
It's not
what
trickling to me.
Plymouth has done too.
John was involved with it, you're good.
Plymouth.
Us?
Yeah.
This
John-
effort right
That's
here.
what Cecil was saying.
When he came up with the.
So you've never looked at the last half?
Because he was on the, he was the lead board.
Which one, Mr. Brady?
Yeah.
I went
Climate action.
That's what we would do. Still.
because it's all their
Anyway, yeah.
assumptions, and
That was
at
one
that
reason why
point,
I volunteered like 45,000.
I don't know
That's
that-
crazy. $850,000.
my assumptions are better.
Even though like, I'm not personally benefit. Like, I'm doing a job for
Yeah, 'cause I got a couple years.
Okay, everybody's, trying to escape, and it's really only 1:45, but we got two more things in their brief, okay? One is, we're doing this chapter review thing, and, I was under the assumption we didn't have work group meetings to do chapter reviews, is that okay? I mean, you're gonna look at them, you're gonna you're gonna send your comments in, right? Does that make sense to you guys? Because we only have two more meetings. We have one that's an all work group meeting for the chapter integration, that's way at the end, and we have two other ones, okay? And things keep coming at us, I keep thinking we're done, but we're not. So we still have to fix up these projects, we have to finish this greenhouse gas thing. I really wanna see the fire safe piece come in here. And, so all the work that you've done, we've gotta somehow incorporate this, figure out scheduling. I'm still hot on going after this, storage bond fight, even though it's way up the hill and it's gonna be difficult. And so the big reason I did this fire fuels thing is, these, storage project, Randy says I can't use the name I usually call them. These storage projects, Temperance, Flat, and Site, say they're gonna be around for 100 years and they generate all these benefits. Well, we don't have fuel treatments that last 100 years. So how is it, depending on how hard you thin, how is it?
Start treating right now, they're not gonna build those for another 15 years.
That's our point exactly. That's exactly the point we made to Feinstein, that you have to have an interim strategy or you're in court over these projects for 20 years. And we can clean up this whole place and generate a lot of storage doing that. That's another subject, and we're gonna flesh that out in the regional proposal. We have to incorporate the traditional ecological knowledge in a real way in these projects. That's the other thing we need to do. And the other big hanging issue in this plan, besides the couple things we touched on today, is that everybody's screaming that we don't have capacity and we don't have an implementing entity. Remember, SOPR did this proposal with the idea in the short term that they were gonna be the implementing entity. Then Sierra Institute took it up and said, for another short term, we're gonna be the implementing entity. We've got the Stewardship Council coming out with the charter and that sort of thing, but they're not the whole watershed. And they do a lot of other things, and so we're still struggling. So the question before you, and I don't need an answer today, you can think about it, is whether one of those last two meetings should be an all work group meeting. Maybe the regional water management group does it at their meeting to just dig into this capacity. We got Audubon, we got fire safe councils, we got RCDs, we got all these people that wanna do things. And even if they have a chance to get together and cooperate on projects, where's the long-term implementation, capacity? And so I just want you to think about, for these last two meetings that you guys have, do we just keep going with what we are doing and have this stuff thrown at us? Or do we ask the Regional Water Management Group if they want to set aside one of their meetings, they've got a lot more meetings than we do, and set up this workshop on capacity building and implementation of these landscape scale long-term efforts that we're actually proposing, right? And so just, it's either we do it at one of our meetings and all the other work groups agree that that's one of their meetings, or we ask the Regional Water Management Group to set aside one of their meetings over this next period and have that workshop. So does anybody have any feedback for me on that one?
Regional watershed management.
Okay, watershed management?
For the management group, I think we were planning to have consecutive meetings for the last few meetings because of the timeline and making sure everything got done. So I'm not sure, we could ask, but I'm not sure that it's possible to set aside one of the meetings at this point.
Yeah, so that's the question that we'll bring to them. I mean, so either would be one of our last two meetings, given that we're gonna do one more chapter integration meeting, which is everybody.
I'd rather it was regional, since we all have to figure it out, at some point in time.
So we'll ask them if they will set aside one of their meetings or part of one of their meetings for a workshop to address this issue, because otherwise, Zoom was saying it just have to make it an unaddressed issue in the plan, which is, I don't wanna give up that fast. We can always do that the last month.
I gotta
unaddressed
go.
issues. Bye. Okay.
I gotta go too.
All right, and so you guys are all
Yeah,
gonna
stay.
submit your comments. We've got a climate change chapter, and we've got a governance chapter, and I have some ideas on some things that jumped out at me. If you guys wanna hear it, I can send it out, otherwise, you just go for it. You wanna hear anything one of my last brilliant thoughts on this? Okay, all right, I'll
Yes,
send
we do.
something out to you on that, and then you submit your own comments, right? And what else did I want to do? I think, do we have any more on the tribal? We're gonna be presenting in December, and we'll figure it out by then.
Not, just to encourage people to contact me, or it's really cumbersome to try to integrate, TK into 81 projects, and we don't have a specific process yet, because it's something we've never done, and so it's exciting, and we have worked a little bit with municipal and some other people, but,
Yeah, the 3 projects we threw on the
Yeah.
table was the region-wide, of course. And then, Trina and I were talking about ones where there's studies, like the Marion Creek project, and what was the other creek project, Rock Creek, right? Is that the name? Where you have, an evaluation component, but the TEK, how are the plants coming back? Was this the right size of the meadow? How would you maintain it, sort of thing? Of course, is not what they're looking at. And so, one thing we've noticed about research projects, if you go on the public lands, you spend 20 years getting a NEPA to do the research just like you're doing a project. And some of these things we'd like to know some answers on sooner. So, this was an example of projects where traditional ecological knowledge could fit, TEK, could fit into this, and it would just be something that maybe the tribes would expand on this as sort of a longer term monitoring. Jay, if that doesn't make you choke?
No.
Okay.
I did talk to him briefly before the meeting.
Me too. No surprises, roll. Hey, Jay. Okay, so I think we did the demonstration. We know what we're gonna recommend to the Regional Water Management Group. John, who ran out of here, gets to make the presentation to them in December. And we'll figure out what we're doing at the next meeting, so.
Just on the greenhouse gas thing, you have the spreadsheet and then there's the 4-page other worksheet. Are you
Not
gonna do
even.
them for everyone, or are you gonna tell them that they need to do it?
I haven't figured that one out yet. I just wanted Brian or somebody to run through it and go, is this?
But that's one, and then there's a whole separate document.
I know.
Yeah.
She didn't give us a deadline on that, so I'm not worried about it.
Okay.
Yes?
No deadline yet.
So, I think that's it.
Were you gonna talk? You're on the agenda. Lynn's on the agenda. Was she on? You want me to talk?
Yes, of course. What was I thinking? Everybody's talking about leaving, so I was trying to get them out the door. Please.
What do you want?
I just wanted Lynn to say that, we're so happy we see her. We always knew about the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, but we never saw anybody. And so I just wanted to thank you for
Yeah, okay.
being
So,
here and,
yeah, we've sort of reoriented our representation for the Sierra, last June. And so we have one person for each sub-region in the Sierra. We have a huge area that we try and cover. So from Modoc County all the way down to Kern. And we have the area, it's 25 million acres. And so we've divided it up into sub-regions, pretty much by county. So we have one person representing the east side, one person in the south, one person in south central, one person central, one person north central, which is me, and then Christy Hoffman is north, Christy who lives here. So the north central region that I am your representative for is Plymouth, Sierra, Butte, and Tehama counties. And what we are doing is going out into the sub-regions, getting to know the partners, getting to know you guys, listening, hearing your issues, and helping where we can. So we're not here to help change policy. I'm not gonna, suggest things and make you change stuff. But we wanna know you, and we wanna know what's going on, and we wanna help where we can, mostly with money. So, we have this Prop 1 program, so I really wanna see whoever has a project March 1st, which is the next deadline, we have time, you can work with me, and we have technical advisors. If you have an implementation project, we can get them out on the site visit. They can give you suggestions, which you can write into your application. So there's a lot we can do. So don't wait till the last minute if you have an idea for a March 1st application. And then there's some rumors going around that there might actually be a new water bond coming up next year, next November, which would probably really just give us a ton of money.
$150 million.
$150 million.
For the Sierra region, yeah.
Yeah, and for a lot of the conservancies, but finally the SNC seems to be invited up to the big boys table, because we have such a large region, you know. It's, the Prop 1 that we have right now is only 25 million for 25 million acres.
Dollar an acre, yay.
Yeah. So if there's any capacity in any of your groups to help support that new water bond, that's something we would appreciate, which would come down to you. We're neutral, we can't do anything.
I've been definitely looking at it. It's on the Attorney General's website, version 8. You want to check it out yourself. So,
Does anybody have any questions?
Do you have contact phone number then?
Yeah, I have cards.
Okay,
I'll
that'd be
put some
great.
on the table here.
Okay, thank you.
and the Sierra Nevada Conservancy put out this grant set of pages, and
Yeah, so if you go to our website, it's electronic, the grant guidelines and the grant application packet. And those two are meant to be read and worked with together. So don't just use one or the other. They need to be combined. There's a lot that we're asking for in terms of land tenures, for Nils knows, which, by the way, the document that you guys have ironed out probably will be used as a template across the whole Sierra.
That's what we thought. We didn't know how to satisfy that in the initial attempt, but
Yeah.
we're
Well,
learning.
there
And
was,
cutting edge, gotta just put it out there.
yeah, you're cutting edge Nils.
Good job.
Yeah, he works for me.
And you too, I want to thank all the innovation, really. This was a day about amazing innovation. Thank you very much. And, you know, you haven't heard the last of this, okay? And I will be getting in touch with you guys, because where are we going? What are we doing on these last 2 meetings? What do these projects look like? Okay?
Thank you, Leah.
My pleasure.
Thanks for
And
lunch.
there's food to go.
Thanks for lunch.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
There's lots of food here. There's even piles under there.
Piles of food, just piles of food.
There are piles of food. You've got kids.
No, we got another GMO food.
Thank you. You gotta go back to the office now, or are you?
No, I'm gonna go.
You know, people that do this stuff.
Technically, that was my day
I know, I'm pulled over in the parking lot, you could belly up. Is it sweet? I'll understand.
The idea for us is to
And I'll go to the bank and give you some cash.
Well, that's kind of what I hope.
Because Ron
Probably
fund.
not.
See what he
Never will.
Maybe help wrap this up. Did you hear? Camera here. We're off the record.